Funding for this CyberWire podcast is made possible in part by LastPass. LastPass is an award-winning security solution that helps millions of individuals in over 70,000 organizations navigate their online lives easily and securely. Businesses can maximize productivity while still maintaining effortless, strong security with LastPass. LastPass can minimize risk and give your IT team a breakthrough integrated single sign-on, password management, and multi-factor authentication solution. Criminals get the news like everyone else, and online crime continues to follow current events. It's up, it's down, it's up again. Forget it, it's TrickBot. A cyber incident affects computer maker Compal. Zoom settles an FTC complaint. Price check on the criminal markets. Ben Yelin on a Canadian shopping mall's collection of over 5 million shoppers' images. Our guest is Ben Brook from Transcend with best practices in privacy and data protections. And spare a thought for a veteran tomorrow. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. It should come as no surprise, but it remains worth noting that criminal fishbait and pretext for online scams closely track current events. The Wall Street Journal, having talked to a range of security companies, reports that U.S. election-themed spam remains high. It's likely to remain high for the next couple of months. And Tech Republic, citing TrustWave researchers' scanning of dark web markets, writes that COVID-19 is also a hot brand in the criminal world. Phony COVID cures, counterfeit travel documents, and scam call boiler room services are all being pushed vigorously. The COVID stuff began to circulate early. TrustWave told Tech Republic they were surprised by how quickly criminals saw opportunity in widespread suffering and moved to monetize the main chance COVID-19 presented them. None of the approaches they've been taking are particularly novel, but they've been effective nonetheless. A large number of domains were registered with COVID-themed names. These are useful for waterholing or as destinations for phishing links. There have been many cases in many countries of campaigns designed to collect fraudulent claims on government disaster relief programs. Fishbait has been devised to inveigle employees trying to adjust to new work arrangements into opening malicious attachments or following equally malicious links. And finally, of course, are traditional scams. Quack medicines, bogus treatments, and the whole familiar soft array of hooked-up medical charlatanism. So where some people see suffering and ask, how can I help? And others who don't quite go so far as, how can I protect myself? Still others ask, how can I monetize this? The people in the third category regard the first two classes as their prey. Prominent among the criminal activity that's continued through the pandemic, of course, is ransomware. A study released this morning by Zscaler finds an interesting wrinkle in the ransomware landscape. They're observing a marked increase in malicious SSL traffic, which suggests that criminals are finding this form of encryption attractive as a way of avoiding inspection and detection. It's not a foolproof way of evading defenses, but there may be some relaxed vigilance with respect to SSL. It's worth noting that SSL is often used loosely to both the deprecated SSL, that is Secure Sockets Layer, and its successor TLS, Transport Layer Security. In any case, SSL, TLS, and the things that mark them online, like the HTTPS prefix and the comforting padlock, aren't sure guarantees that there's no badness in the traffic. TrickBot continues to seem able to take a punch. Intel 471 today outlined how the gang behind TrickBot has managed to recover, shift, and work around repeated government and industry disruption of its infrastructure. The anti-TrickBot campaign began in earnest on September 22nd, when U.S. Cyber Command is generally believed to have begun interrupting the bot's ability to reach their command and control servers. There was a continued back and forth until the beginning of November, and by the end of last week, TrickBot activity proper had dropped to negligible levels. The operators had in the meantime shifted to Emotet and other tools. As Intel 471 put it, between October 28, 2020 and November 6, 2020, we have not seen any new TrickBot infection campaigns in our monitoring nor in open-source reporting. We observed the number of active and working TrickBot control servers being reduced over time, and we were unable to identify any working TrickBot control servers as of November 6. End quote. But in a sign of how resilient this sort of criminal enterprise can be, that inactivity lasted about 3 days. Quote, on November 9, 2020, we did see a new version of TrickBot that was distributed via a spam campaign. End quote. So, back to the grind for those who would take out TrickBot once and for all. Good hunting. Compal, a Taiwan-based manufacturer that's the world's second-largest laptop maker, is said to have sustained a ransomware attack over the weekend. ZDNet, which sources the news about ransomware to media in Taiwan, also reports that a Compal executive denied any ransomware attack, but did acknowledge an unspecified hacking incident, apparently confined to business networks. Compal Deputy Managing Director King Zhong Lu told news outlets that the company is not being blackmailed by hackers as it is rumored by the outside world. Apple, Acer, Lenovo, Dell, Toshiba, HP, and Fujitsu are among Compal's customers. The company also makes a large range of peripherals. The company is returning to normal operations. Zoom has settled a U.S. Federal Trade Commission complaint in which the FTC alleged that the online meeting platform had engaged in a series of deceptive and unfair practices that undermined the security of its users. TechCrunch says that the complaint turned in part on suggestions that Zoom's services were in fact more secure, more robustly encrypted than in fact they were. The settlement requires Zoom to implement a robust information security program to settle allegations that the video conferencing provider engaged in a series of deceptive and unfair practices that undermined the security of its users. The criminal market has its ups and downs. InfoSecurity magazine reports that prices of a batch of RDP credentials belonging to 7,500 educational institutions have dropped in 2 Russophone criminal markets. Digital Shadows confirmed to the publication that the price fell last week from 25 bitcoins, roughly $387,000, to 10 bitcoins, about $155,000. Cheaper, but still pricey. For $155,000, you could buy a decent little bungalow in Florida or a Polestar 1 hybrid sports coupe. But some people think they'd rather spend their jack on, remote desktop protocol credentials for school networks. Sad. And finally, we'll be taking tomorrow off as we observe Veterans Day. It's sobering to recall that November 11th was chosen for this day in remembrance to mark the end of the First World War, and that no veterans of that war remain with us. Other generations are passing. So spare a thought for the veterans tomorrow and spend some time with any you know, young or old. We will. The CyberWire will be back as usual on Thursday. And now, a word from our sponsor, ExtraHop, securing modern business with cloud-native network detection and response. The massive shift to remote work has turned the reality of work on its head. With cloud and multi-cloud adoption, comprehensive visibility is more important than ever. But in order to protect your business, you need more than unified visibility. You need intelligence response workflows so teams can collaborate easily and act quickly. ExtraHop helps organizations like Wizards of the Coast detect threats up to 95% faster. As John Kreese, senior IT engineer, puts it, quote, ExtraHop is helping us accelerate cloud adoption by ensuring our workloads are secure. See how it works in the full product demo, free and no forms required, at extrahop.com/cyber. That's extrahop.com/cyber. And we thank ExtraHop for sponsoring our show. Ben Brook is co-founder and CEO at data privacy infrastructure company Transcend. He joins us with thoughts on best practices in dealing with new privacy and data protections.
Recently, there were 2 major privacy laws passed. There was GDPR and CCPA. And these are some of the first laws to encode what we call data rights. And you can think of data rights as the first time that users really have any degree of control over the personal data that companies collect about them. Whereas before, privacy laws were all about just, writing policies and informing users. Now users have actual controls in their hands that they can use. And so companies are actually scrambling to adopt, and companies are actually scrambling to comply with these new incoming requests coming from end users. So when somebody says, delete my data, it's a very tall task for a company to go to its hundreds of data systems and vendors and actually execute that erasure process.
What are your recommendations for organizations who are looking to get a handle on this? I mean, what's the best way for them to get started?
Yeah, so there's a few key principles that companies can adopt right now. And one of those is just adopting a philosophy of alignment over antagonism between these two departments, the legal and the engineering department. So something that we see that actually works very well is just to set up a working group between these two functions and sort of have them meet regularly to hash out these differences, because inevitably they're going to come up repeatedly. And having that alignment is key. Another one is to actually think more about the user experience rather than compliance. And this is really interesting because once you start actually taking privacy from a UX perspective, you actually start figuring out how to simplify a lot of the things that the regulations say. And if you think of the core principle of these regulations, it's really about respecting users, right? So rather than trying to go through an itemized list of compliance requirements, it's often a lot simpler to think of it in the perspective of, would my users be mad if we did this? Or how do we give them the best privacy controls that we can? And so, user experience as a priority over compliance, I think, is really helpful. And then lastly, really pushing to achieve technical scale over manual workflows. So companies really need to think about getting it to a place where they have set it and forget it automation, where it's a secure and it's a system agnostic infrastructure that can be connected once to wherever that personal data lives, and then allow for automatic fulfillment of these privacy requests. And once you have that, everything sort of makes sense again, and you're no longer sort of running in this hamster wheel of continuously trying to chase down systems and put some unique workflow to each one. So just doing those are really actually simple ways of making this an effort that is sane and actually fosters a better sort of collaborative environment around privacy.
That's Ben Brook from Transcend. And now, a word from our sponsor, KnowBe4. Email is still the #1 attack vector the bad guys use, with a whopping 91% of cyber attacks beginning with phishing. But email hacking is much more than phishing and launching malware. Find out how to protect your organization in an on-demand webinar by Roger A. Grimes, KnowBe4's data-driven defense evangelist. Roger walks you through 10 incredible ways you can be hacked by email and how to stop the bad guys. And he also shares a hacking demo by KnowBe4's Chief Hacking Officer, Kevin Mitnick. So check out the 10 incredible ways where you'll learn how silent malware launch, remote password hash capture, and rogue rules work, why rogue documents, establishing fake relationships, and compromising a user's ethics are so effective, details behind clickjacking and web beacons, and how to defend against all of these. Go to knowbe4.com/10 ways and watch the webinar. That's knowbe4.com/1 and 0 WAYS. And we thank KnowBe4 for sponsoring our show. And joining me once again is Ben Yelin. He's from the University of Maryland Center for Health and Homeland Security, also my co-host over on the Caveat podcast. Hello, Ben.
Hi, Dave.
You and I talk a lot about the collection of people's images with or without their consent over on the Caveat podcast. You know, privacy issues are something we talk about regularly. We've got a story here from Yahoo Finance. It's titled Cadillac Fairview. That's a mall, not a car.
I was so disappointed when I found that out.
Right. They collected 5 million shoppers' images without their consent. What's going on here, Ben?
So this happened in Canada. There are 12 shopping malls where they had this pilot program where they were going to take images of shoppers, and it ended up being 5 million, apparently to analyze the age and gender of the shoppers for their own advertising purposes, to kind of see who was there during what time periods, et cetera. It was basically market research. They said they were not doing it to identify individuals. Now, Canada has or at least the provinces of Canada have what are called privacy commissioners. We have that in some states here, or equivalents of that, but they seem pretty robust in Canada. And they are pushing back against what happened at these malls. The malls are saying that patrons had fair notice because there were decals on the shopping mall entry doors referring to a privacy policy. Okay. I don't know about you. I have never read a decal on a mall, on the entry to a mall. I'd assume that if I did read it, it would say something like, no yelling and screaming after 8 p.m. and, things that are not related to we're taking real-time photos of you, 5 million of you as you walk through our malls.
Yeah.
So what the privacy commissioner said in a release is that shoppers had no reason to expect that their image was being collected by an inconspicuous camera, nor that it would be used with facial recognition technology for analysis. And the big problem here is meaningful consent, especially in their view, considering how sensitive this data is. It's biometric data, so you can find out a lot of personal information about somebody. It was a really interesting story. I have to say I'm not generally on the beat of what happens at malls in Canada, but certainly a story that's up our alley.
Well, I guess I have a few questions about this. I mean, first of all, just in the pure gathering of images, I mean, how is this different from gathering up just run-of-the-mill security footage? That's it. You got video cameras all over the mall that are always rolling, and that's being recorded and stored for a certain amount of time. We all seem to be, at peace with that.
So I think that's a good point. The one thing that I think the privacy commissioners tried to get across here is that these are more secretive and inconspicuous. So they're in digital information kiosks. People probably don't expect that those are going to exist at a mall, whereas they do expect that there are going to be, closed caption security cameras, not closed caption, closed circuit security cameras. So, I think that's potentially one difference. But yeah, I mean, it is a very public place. It's a place where you probably don't have much of a reasonable expectation of privacy, no matter what you're doing. Because you should know that if the camera isn't catching you, there are generally a lot of people there who can see what you're doing. So, I think that kind of cuts against the outrage that one would have about this story, that it's not like they're using this technology outside people's houses. It is a mall, and you are choosing to go there. I think if the mall made it clear and had warnings that were a little more accessible to their shoppers, then maybe the privacy commissioners in Canada wouldn't have had such a problem.
Right. I'm envisioning something like, how some malls will have interactive maps of the mall where you can walk up and, say, I want to find all the stores that have shoes. And you click a button. And
sunglasses hot. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. But while you're facing that sign, I suppose there's a camera in the sign that is then taking this very clear, front-on, well-lit photograph of you.
Smile, and if you're on camera.
Yeah, if you don't know that's happening, that could be disconcerting. I will say, back in a previous life when I was working in the broadcast industry, if we were shooting at a place like a mall, we would put up signage that said, hey, this is a public place, but, be aware, we're making a movie today. And if you walk by, there's a chance you could be in the movie. And if you have a problem with that, please avoid this area or let somebody know or something like that. And
I think they could have gotten away with this. I don't think there's anything inherently, it is biometric data, so it is personal. I don't think there's inherently anything wrong with this if customers were given proper warning. And, something that said very clearly, not in just a small decal on the entryway door, this is what's happening in the mall. You can opt out of this by leaving. But at least you're aware of it. And if you're going to stay, you're consenting to it.
Right. Or click here and the mall doors will unlock.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, you got
stay
nothing.
Away.
Yep.
Yeah. Boy, what a quaint idea, right? Asking someone's permission before you gather an image of them. It's adorable, isn't it?
I know. So antiquated.
Yeah. All right. Well, interesting story for sure. Ben Yelin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible, especially our supporting sponsor, Proofpoint's Observit, the leading people-centric insider threat management solution. Learn more at observit.com. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. And for professionals and cybersecurity leaders who want to stay abreast of this rapidly evolving field, sign up for CyberWire Pro. It'll save you time and keep you informed, like a rock. Listen for us on your Alexa smart speaker, too. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Elliot Peltzman, Puru Prakash, Stefan Vaziri, Kelsey Bond, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yelin, Nick Valecki, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here on Thursday. It's time to take a moment to tell you about our sponsor, Tanium. Today, we rely on endpoints for everything from remote work to mobile banking, telemedicine, and online learning. That's why managing and securing these endpoints has never been more important. Tanium provides unified endpoint management and security built for the world's most demanding IT environments, providing instant visibility, complete context, and rapid response. That's why all 6 branches of the U.S. Armed Forces and half of the Fortune 100 trust Tanium to protect their IT operations. Join Tanium at this year's Converge 2020 virtual event to learn about the latest advances in unified endpoint management and security, connect with industry peers, and hear directly from other leading technology partners like Google Cloud and Salesforce. Go to converge.tanium.com and enter promo code CyberWire to receive a 15% discount on a lab pass. And we thank Tanium for sponsoring our show.